I don't know you that well, so...
Oh, well, he...
As someone who enjoys watching movies, I always love it whenever I can get to experience a movie without knowing much about it beforehand. There's something more satisfying when you dive in completely unaware of the film you're about to watch. It's riskier for sure, there's a chance you might be watching a stinker, but then there's also a good chance that the film will be a pleasant surprise. In that case, the risk will have been totally worth it. Luckily for me, when I took a chance by blind buying the Blu-ray for Amira and Sam, I didn't end up disappointed. On the contrary, I felt immensely pleased with my purchase. I had never heard anything about Amira and Sam before watching it. I guess all I knew is that it starred Martin Starr, the dude from all those Judd Apatow comedies. I guess he's now most famous for the successful HBO show Silicon Valley. But I have to admit I have never seen a single episode of that show. But after having seen this film, I'm definitely adding it to my watch list. That being said, I'm assuming when this film was released back in 2014, moviegoers were probably more interested in seeing their favorite TV vampire, Paul Wesley, more than Starr. On the surface, Amira and Sam would fall right into the romantic comedy category, I guess. But it certainly got more to offer than just your typical boy meets girl routine. We start the story in New York City in 2008, just before the Great Recession. If you're wondering, as I did, of the significance of the film taking place in this particular year, that will unfold as the story progresses. We meet Sam, played by Martin Starr, a Green Beret veteran that had served in both Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Life post-war has not been easy for him. He works as a security guard just to make ends meet. During his tour of duty, he befriended a local translator named Bassam Jafari. Sam decides to reunite with his old friend who now resides in New York. Bassam lives with his niece Amira, an immigrant from Iraq. Amira spends her days selling pirated DVDs and tries her best to avoid the cops in doing so. When she meets Sam, she immediately dislikes him because she had lost a brother who was killed by Americans during the war. One thing leads to another. Sam has been trusted to be the caretaker for Amira while her uncle is out of town for work. Here, the core story of the film starts to take shape. As I mentioned earlier, Sam has been struggling to find work. He recently got fired from his security guard gig when he tried to pay back a group of obnoxious and rude yuppies who had been abusing him earlier. It turns out that his cousin Charlie, a successful Wall Street type guy, played by Paul Wesley, had provided that job for Sam. When Sam joins Charlie for drinks with his work buddies, he manages to impress the latter's co-workers with his war stories and natural charm. Charlie then hatches an idea for Sam to join his sales team in the hopes of closing an account from an ex-veteran investor who he thinks will be comfortable with a fellow veteran handling his business. The movie jumps back and forth between Sam's relationship with his cousin and also his new blooming, unexpected closeness to Amira. I really like this film. First-time filmmaker Sean Mullen wants to tell a story about a veteran who is now trying to cope and adjust in a world post 9/11. And he does this quite brilliantly and without stepping onto cliché territories as well. How many times have we seen a plot where the character comes back from war, all damaged, faces some sort of PTSD, mental breakdown, or some sort of disability? Well, not in this film. Sam is a perfectly capable man whose only real issue is trying to find a job, or rather, trying to find his place in the world. He even has aspirations to become a stand-up comic. Still, Sam is unsure of what the future holds for him. Speaking of Sam, Martin Starr truly shines in this film. I'd never seen a film of his where he was the lead, and to my surprise, he is a leading man material. albeit not the conventional kind. And that's a great thing. His Sam is a really interesting character with strong values, and you get a real sense of what type of person he is. He's kind and honest, and at times unapologetically witty, but he won't take any bullshit. He will not be taken advantage of. His world suddenly brightens when he meets the young and beautiful Amira, played brilliantly by Dina Shihabi. She's a little rough around the edges and tries her best to survive as an immigrant in America, knowing very well that if she were ever going back to her motherland, it would be far too dangerous. But life in her new home is no picnic either. If Sam is looking for that next step in his life, Amira is trying to find her identity, shedding everyone's perception of her as a young Iraqi woman living in Western society. Although they have nothing in common initially, Amira and Sam eventually start to form a special bond with each other, and this is where the film triumphs. On a quote on the back of the Blu-ray, some critic hails it as, quote, similar to Richard Linklater's Before Sunrise, unquote. Now, I am a huge Before trilogy fan, and while I get and do sense a tiny DNA of said film, it's not quite up to par with it. Having said that, this small gem of a movie is still remarkably good. Does it have issues? Sure it does. The main focus of the film is a little uneven as the audience follows Sam's journey into his new business life, hopping along wherever his cousin decides to bring him to. Whenever the film focuses on Sam and Charlie's relationship, I kept wanting the scenes to end abruptly and shift back to the love portion of the film, which was far more interesting and engaging. Paul Wesley is fine as the yuppie cousin Charlie, and he tries his best with what is given, but I just wanted more of Amira and Sam. There's a beautiful scene with just Martin and Dina in a very tight space, and this is probably where we do get a sense of that little Linklater magic presented to us. It's an important scene where we witness Amira and Sam completely comfortable in each other's presence and share intimate thoughts. I could be wrong, but I believe this scene was one long take, and it's just rewarding to watch. Hence, it is my favorite scene of the film. I won't go to spoiler territories because I really want you guys to watch this film and experience it yourself. Like any decent love story, there has to be conflict, and yes, there are a few present in this film. As you might have expected from a romance between an American and an Iraqi, there is that obligatory don't judge a book by its cover aspect throughout the film when it comes to Sam and Amira's perception of each other, as well as the amount of prejudice and ignorance from their environment. Was it a little too on the nose? Perhaps, but at that point I had already been sucked into the wonderful world of the two leads to truly raise an issue with it. I was pleasantly surprised by this film, and I hope you will like it as much as I do. If you haven't seen this film, please pick up a copy, stream it, watch it however you can. Martin Starr makes a great leading man, and he's made a fan out of me. His chemistry with Dina Shihabi was so gratifying to watch that when the film ended, I wanted more. Yes, the film had more tricks up its sleeve than the usual saccharine offerings of a standard rom-com, resulting in the script's attempt of establishing the struggles of veterans rejoining the real world in Sam's character, though not everything quite gelled. All things considered, the most consequential aspect of the story was all the romance, and luckily it worked just fine. The film is charming, witty, and just a delight to watch. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you got something out of it. I don't consider myself a critic or anything like that. I just love to share my thoughts on movies that I like, and I hope you enjoy my videos. If you do, please support my channel by subscribing, ring that bell so you'll know when my next video is out. As always, I'm super curious in hearing what you guys thought of this film. Please let me know in the comments. And what are your hidden gem romantic movies? I'd love to know. That's it for now, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers.
أميرة!
أني مالي علاقة بجماعتك الجنود.
مفهوم.
You speak Arabic?
Yeah.